All right, so I'm out here in the barn where I keep the worm bins. I got a couple things that I need to do tonight. So first things first, I need to get these two mixed. I haven't done that in a minute. I got some more coffee grounds I'm gonna add to my jar, mix around to put in there. I'm gonna some old lettuce to feed them. I got a cheap food processor off Amazon. All the videos I've watched, everyone grinds their food up and it seems to work a little bit better. It's not really food, so to say. It's just like extra treats for them. I know that's weird, but that's kind of how it was described to me because they eat the bedding that's in here. Right. So all that bedding that I have in here, that's what they'll eat. And then this is just kind of like extra energy stuff for them. So I gotta get that done. Then I got these buckets for my wife's work. So I'm gonna Anyways, so I got another empty bin right here that I'm going to turn into another worm bin. I ended up getting some more worms, so I got to get that ready. This one's just full of dried leaves and shredded cardboard and paper. That's kind of like my bedding bin that I'll use, so I don't have to do it every single time I add more bedding. And then here I got these buckets. I'm going to turn one into what's called a breeder bin. That's how, again, it's described to the people who've explained it to me. So I'm going to try one of those out. Supposedly, if you do it right, you can get more worms quickly. And then the other buckets, I'm going to make some pre-mix bedding that once I get this bin prepped, I'll pour into there and then I'll add the new worms I got into that. So quite a few things to do. I'm still actually pretty new at this, and I know it for those of you that probably have never heard of vermicompost, it sounds really weird. That's what I thought when I started. But the more I looked into it, the cooler it was, and I'd like to get to the point where I could use the worm castings as like fertilizer for my garden and all that stuff. But this is where I'm starting. So like I said, I'm still pretty new to it, still figuring it out. So probably a lot of more mistakes. But anyways, we'll get started. I'll try and video as much of it. Dang, I can't talk tonight. I'll try and record as much as I can, and maybe make a longer video or something to put on YouTube. I don't know yet, but anyways, we'll get started and see how it goes. All right, so I got this cheap food processor off of Amazon. Like I said before, all the videos I watch, people use these and they make a slurry out of the table scraps that they put in their worm bins. The idea is that it's easy, it breaks down easier, the worms can eat it easier, and it turns into compost and worms casting easier than if I just put like whole or like squished up vegetables in there. So I'm gonna try this real quick, see if it works with the old lettuce I got, and go from there. So it worked. It worked pretty well. I put some coffee in there to thicken it up. Apparently, worms like coffee grounds. So I added that in there, made it a little thicker, turned it into a pretty good slurry. So now I'll mix the bins around, fluff them up, kind of mix everything in. Then I'll add a little more bedding and some of the slurry I just made, and then we'll go from there. So they're all mixed around. It's a little hard to see, but so I got them all mixed and fluffed, and I got my holes in the center. So now I'm going to add some of this food slurry to them. I can do it without spilling all over myself. Okay, I'm going to turn my light on. There we go. So some in there. Take this slicer thing out. Put a little in there. Down. So cover this. Level this all out. And then ideally, they'll kind of all crowd that food I just made. and they'll make more worms and they'll eat it a little bit quicker. And the more worms I get, the faster they'll turn this all into worm castings. So the feeding part's done. I'm going to make some more bedding now to put on top. What I have, or what I'm going to do, is I'm going to mix some dairy compost with that in one of these buckets, and I'll add some water to it and get it all, moist and everything. And then I'll put a layer on each one of those bins. So we'll get started doing that. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple handfuls of this dairy compost in here. Which, this is already pretty fine, so that's good. I don't necessarily have a measuring system figured out yet, so I'm just going to kind of guesstimate, throw a few more of these in there. I think that should be pretty good to start. Then put a couple of handfuls of shredded cardboard and dried leaves in there. And then I'll add some water here in a minute. So a lot of this is kind of just an amalgamation of videos I've watched on YouTube. A bunch of different people like Captain Matt and Missouri Worm Farms. They all seem to have a different way of doing it. So I figured I'd just kind of try something that makes sense to me in my mind and see if it works. I mean, if it doesn't, it doesn't. I mean, that's just part of the process. But if it does, then I'm just one step closer to being able to expand this a little bit and get more casting. Kind of mix this around. These buckets might not be the best way to do this, so I'm going to try it once like this, and if it turns into just being a rodeo, I'll think of a better plan. Probably might just need a flatter, shallower bin to do this easier. So, I'm gonna grab the water. Just start adding this. I don't spill them all over everything. Good thing I brought a towel out here. Yeah, you just add water and then you mix. The idea is to get the whole thing to where when you clump it, it goes like that. So it looks like one bucket is enough to do one bin. So I'll need to make another one to put in the other one or the other bin, and then we should be good on that. Okay, so I got the 2 buckets I made spread out on here, one in each bin. I'm only going to do a little bit for now. I'm going to see how well it works before I do a whole bunch. So the only thing I need to do is put the bubble wrap on. I already got this one in, so I got some for there. And all this does is just, it helps hold the moisture in and let air flow so this doesn't get all rotten and start stinking and stuff. So I'll add these on there, and then these bins will be done for the night. So I think now what I'll do is I'm going to make 2 more buckets of that kind of pre-bedding mix and let that sit overnight. That way I have it ready for tomorrow, and then I'll pick up where I left off, sometime in the afternoon. So hopefully for those of you that made it this far, thought that was kind of cool or interesting. If you did, drop a follow. That'd be pretty sweet. But other than that, just stay tuned and, until next time.